Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the month of Jumada al-Ula, in the second year after Hijrah, a mere month after having returned from the previous Ghazwa of Buwat, the Muslims in Medina received news that a caravan of the Quraysh will be leaving from Makkah on a particular date and will be heading to Sham. It wasn't to be a big caravan with loads of goods and lots of men as the previous one. But for the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, getting booty was only a perk of jihad. It wasn't their purpose for going out. Their purpose was to obey Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and assist the deen of Allah. And if during the course of them fulfilling their duties, Allah grants them wealth, فَلِلَّهِ الْحَمْدُ وَالْمِنَّةِ. And so tirelessly, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum prepared themselves once again and set out, being led by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to a place known as Al Ushayrah. And this is where the Ghazwa got its name from. This Ghazwa is also known as Ghazwatul Ashira or Dhul Ushayrah and different similar names. This area known as Al Ushayrah is near to Yambu and Nakhl in today's time. It was a journey of almost 200 kilometers before the Muslims reached the spot. Now, because it wasn't going to be a major caravan or a pre-planned battle, therefore the Sahaba radiallahu anhum were not specifically called on to take part. But yet 150 to 200 Sahaba radiallahu anhum immediately stepped forward to join the Ghazwa with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The journey was long and the weather was hot, and the Muslims made a number of stops along the way. After all, there were only 30 camels that the whole army of Muslims were using, taking turns to ride. In order to understand the reality of such travels, it's important that you take your mind back in time and see things as they were back then. Everyone knows that you have to travel 48 miles today in order to be deemed as a musafir. But where did this number of 48 come from? It came from the fact that an average journey on camel would take 3 days to travel 48 miles back in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So for the Muslims to pack up and leave Medina to go somewhere, it wasn't some journey done in a morning and return home later that same day. Not at all. Rather, the reality was that a journey such as this Ghazwa would take almost a week just to reach the point where the ambush would be laid. Before leaving Medina, the Sahabi who was put in charge of things in the city and to see to the protection of the Islamic State was the brother of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hazrat Abu Salama ibn Abdul Asad radiyallahu anhu. Yes, the brother of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was not related by blood but by milk, as he was the milk brother of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was also the cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as his mother was Barra bint Abdul Muttalib, the paternal aunt of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is also that famous Sahabi who was the previous husband of Ummul Mu'mineen, Hazrat Salama radiyallahu anha. The city of Medina was left in the capable hands of this great Sahabi, and so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam set out with this group of mujahideen. The flag bearer carrying the liwa of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on this day was the beloved uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hazrat Hamza radiyallahu anhu. Upon reaching the designated point, the Muslims went about setting camp, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam led the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum in salah. That place became known as Masjidul Ushayrah, and it exists up until this day, albeit in an open piece of land demarcated with stones. The Muslims remained camped at this place for the remainder of the month of Jumada al-Ula. However, no caravan came. And then the news reached the Muslims that the caravan had already passed that way many days prior to the date that they had originally said they would be traveling. This tactic, which the mushrikeen used, would be referred to in these times as fake news, because they had deliberately spread false information about their journey, as they knew it would reach the ears of the Muslims. So after spreading the news, they left straight away. So by the time the Muslims reached the rendezvous point, the caravan had actually passed by that way many days earlier. The Muslims were unable to intercept the caravan on this occasion, but the time would come when this caravan would make an appearance once again in the not too distant future, in an event which would never be erased from the minds of the Muslims until the end of time. The unrelenting raids and ambushes of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum and their continually growing military might did not go unnoticed though to the many tribes living in the Hijaz. So on this occasion, the Muslims came into contact with the tribe of Banu Mudlij, who were allies of Banu Damra that had signed a treaty with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam just 3 months earlier. So they were awed by the fact that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum were carrying out attack after attack and raid after raid, wreaking havoc upon the mushrikeen of Makkah. So they needed no convincing of the fact that the Muslim Ummah were a force to be reckoned with. So they stepped forward, like the allies of Banu Damra had, and proposed a peace treaty with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they would not fight the Muslims, nor ally with anyone or assist anyone that seeks to harm the Muslims. This treaty too was accepted by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and immediately the Islamic State expanded, because the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum now did not need to worry about these tribes attacking the Muslims. And the Muslims could travel freely through the places where they lived, and no one would try anything with them. Rather, they would welcome and host the Muslims instead. So the Muslims returned to Medina with a victory granted to them by Allah of the Islamic State expanding without them having to do anything themselves. And in this manner, the third Ghazwa of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ended. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.